Big story this evening. The rupee fell to its lowest level in a week. This after a Bengali newspaper, that's the Anand Bazar Patrika, reported that RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan has rejected a second term. Now, the report cited unnamed sources and said that the government does not want an extension. The report also said that the Prime Minister wanted Rajan to serve another term. Meanwhile, another report on Reuters quotes unnamed government sources and says that the Prime Minister is proud of what Rajan has done. It goes on to say that the PMO has given a stern warning in the past not to indulge in public spats with the governor. Well, joining us now is a former North Block insider, Arvind Mayaram. Mr. Mayaram, appreciate you joining us here, sir. Let me start by asking you about what you make of, if I could call it, the curious case of Raghuram Rajan. All kinds of reports, and of course, we've seen the charge sheet that's been presented by Subramaniam Swamy a couple of days earlier. But do you believe that it's a done deal, that Raghuram Rajan is going to stay on as the governor of the Reserve Bank of India, and all of this is in the realm of speculation and hawabazi, if I could call it that?
Actually, it's very difficult for me to say whether he will stay on or not, because that is a decision that the government shall take at some point of time. But if you ask me whether he should stay on or not, then I can certainly say that from the perspective of the Indian economy, and at the stage at which we are today, which is basically at the cusp, we can either take off on a high trajectory or we can continue on a plateau of 7% plus. His presence is going to add the crucial muscle in our attempts to achieve higher growth rates.
So you're saying his presence will add a crucial muscle in our attempts to recover faster. What do you make of the commentary that's been coming in? The government, or to be fair, the finance minister, has refused to get drawn into this battle between Subramaniam Swamy and Raghuram Rajan. The governor himself hasn't really addressed this issue, with the exception on CNBC in an interview to us, saying that there's a lot more that needs to be done. How would you read the various comments and this sort of the atmospherics, if I could call it that?
I see, as far as the political commentary is concerned, again, I would be not the right person to comment on that, because there must be reasons for people who are now gunning for him or are accusing him of being obstructionist or anti-growth. But the fact is that this is all cacophony. I don't think the governor himself has engaged himself into any kind of an argument on this case, on this ground. And I would very much see that Raghuram Rajan is a man who would not leave his task unfinished, and he does see that his task is yet unfinished. And therefore, if he gets an extension, he would be able to finish that task. So, to my mind, he is focused on his job, and to that extent, he will, if the government wants him to continue, he will continue, and if they say don't continue, he will go back to doing what he does otherwise. But I think if he's given a choice, he will continue to finish the task which he thinks is still unfinished.
Okay, that's important. You believe that if he is given a choice, he will continue, though reports suggest to the contrary today. But let me ask you, sir, how much of a setback will it be, especially as global investors who look at India, other central bankers who look at India? I mean, Raghuram Rajan is the toast of the town. You look at the headlines that are already sort of talking about the buzz in India, about the rock star central banker's departure or exit. How much of a setback will it be if Raghuram Rajan were not given a second term, or he chooses to move out?
Well, I think there is something called confidence index. I mean, apart from all the other parameters that everybody looks at, like macroeconomic parameters, deficit, fiscal deficit, current account deficit, inflation, growth, and so on, there is also something called confidence index, which is very, very critical for the investors. When they look at any country for investment, they're also looking at institutions, how stable those institutions are, who are the people who head those institutions, are those people credible, do they have the wherewithal in terms of intellectual firepower to be able to deal with the situation, a volatile situation as it exists today in the global economy? Can they steer, the country's economy in a right direction? I think these are very important questions that the investors, contemplate. And in that scenario, I think Raghuram Rajan's presence, because also he's globally accepted as an intellectual leader in the field of financial sector, he evokes that kind of confidence. So his presence does make a difference.
Let me ask you this, as a former bureaucrat and as a North Block insider, given the fact that financial markets are watching this development, today we've seen the rupee ostensibly react to this possibility of Rajan not staying on. What would the prudent steps be now for the government? If you were in North Block, what would you have done now to address this issue?
Well, if I was in the North Block, I would have advised the government to put the controversy to rest. The longer this controversy continues, the greater damage it does. I think the government should take a call, and it is within their competence to do that, to say that Raghuram Rajan is being asked to continue and make that declaration so that all speculation is put to rest.
And that is, of course, if the decision is to ask him to continue. His term, of course, expires in September, so the government does technically have more time. But you're saying that given the state of flux and the volatility and the impact it's having on financial markets, perhaps it's best for the government to come out and state its case.
I would think so. This also gives a very clear indication about what the government wants. The clarity in the decision-making process within the government, and it also strengthens the credibility of the government. So, whatever decision they have to take, suppose they want to decide that no, we don't want him there, then they should say so. That I think he has done a good job, but I think we are looking for somebody who would do something else. I mean, whatever the decision is, but the controversy should be put to rest. They should not be allowed to continue to go on for the next 2-3 months. Because it doesn't benefit anybody.
You're absolutely right on that front, Mr. Mayaram. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Let's see how this story unfolds and how this story develops. There are twists and turns practically every day, but appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. That's Arvind Mayaram.